Hello, everyone, and welcome back to No Cap Space. Today is a little bit different. It's different in a couple ways, right? You could tell maybe by the backgrounds because I have boots on the ground here in Austin ahead of LSU versus Texas. My friend Andrew is boots on the ground as well in Nashville for the first day of Athletes Unlimited. But this episode and edition of No Cap Space, if you will, is different for a couple of other reasons. And I think you might be able to tell off the rip here that the tone is a little bit different today because normally you know us as fun, bubbly, ready to banter, and all that stuff will be back very, very soon. But today is a day for some capital J journalism. It's a little bit more serious here today. So before we dive into that, I got to note it. I got to do it. Make sure you subscribe to No Cap Space WBB.com because if you've been subscribed, then you maybe have already seen the story we've talked about. It's completely free to subscribe to the free newsletter. And of course, our YouTube here or wherever you listen to No Cap Space is the best way to support us. It's the best way to stay involved with No Cap Space. Let's dive in. There is a divide in the Chicago Sky ownership. On January 28th, a lawsuit for minority owner Steven Rogers in the Sky was filed against Michael Alter, the majority owner of the franchise, due to, quote, Alter's actions breached his fiduciary duty to the minority investors, including plaintiff, and unfairly deprived them of the value of their investments, dating back to 2022, just a year after the Sky's championship season. For some, this divide might be new news, but for us here at No Cap Space, this is something that we've been privy to for several months now, and we have been looking into and increasingly researching and sourcing and doing the journalism behind the work to bring you this report and everything we're bringing you here today. Speaking individually, I had heard some of these findings, but Andrew, you are the one that has been deep diving and has been in the legal documents, in the weeds of all of this. And you're here to bring us the receipts, the background, everything that we need to know from what we can currently report on the situation going on with the Chicago Sky. So my friend, I'm ready for the ride. I'm ready for the ISO. Let me know where to begin with this. Maybe we list out maybe some of the stakeholders here, and then we truly dive into the weeds of this.
Yeah. So first things first, definitely subscribe to the free daily newsletter, because if you did, you would have gotten this at 7 o'clock Eastern time on Wednesday morning.
Yeah.
So if you want to be the first one in the know for all women's basketball news and notes and learn some things about the game here and there, we're your place. So we'll lay out the stakeholders first, and then I'll do my best Pablo Torre impression, which is going to be very good, but fuck it, we ball. Your stakeholders here are people that most WNBA fans know. The Chicago Sky is an organization. Their principal owner, Michael Alter, who is the original owner of this franchise, he brought them to Chicago in 2005, put up $10 million along with other minority investors to create a WNBA team in the Windy City. One of those original investors is a guy by the name of Steven Rogers. And yes, I know, Steve Rogers, Captain America.
Wow.
Glad we got that out of the way. Steve Rogers, for people who are unaware of who he is, extremely successful entrepreneur, was a senior lecturer at Harvard Business School for many years, sits on the board of directors for companies like SC Johnson & Son, which creates things like Windex, to give you an idea of how big that company actually is. He sits on the board of that company. In addition to him, Nadia Rawlinson is a central figure in this story, the chief operating officer of the Chicago Sky, who is also part owner of the team, entered the fold in 2022 when a capital raise was done by the Sky. They sold off some shares to bring in new investors. They came in buying a 10% share of the team at $8.5 million, which put the valuation of the franchise back at that time at $85 million. The final person in this story is Jeff Pagliacca, the GM of the Chicago Sky, who we have profiled and discussed on here at length before. And then there are some ancillary characters here, which includes the village of Bedford Park, which is a kind of weird suburb, but not quite, of Chicago. It is characterized as a place that is more industrial land than it is actual homeowners. But the noteworthy thing to know about Bedford Park is the home of Midway Airport. And because they are the home of Midway Airport, they are a place that makes some pretty good money off the tax revenue they receive from Midway Airport. So we are going to start with the lawsuit itself that was filed. And the journalism 101 of this is, as media members, we have certain protections, obviously under the First Amendment, but we are also afforded certain privileges. Most information is publicly available, especially as it pertains to a government entity, right? It is legal. They have to make their documents publicly available at a certain time. But as media members, a tool in our tool belt is what is called open records requests. We have the ability to request any set of documents from any set of meetings that any government entity anywhere in the United States has. Additionally, you can also pull documents such as lawsuits through open records requests with circuit courts, with local courts, and even bigger courts, if you really want to. Now, those lawsuits will always come with a degree of redaction, because for civil suits in particular, there is money, there's proprietary information, there is certain information that is not allowed to be shown to the public just yet. So you end up getting redactions in lawsuits. And the final piece of the journalist toolkit here is sourcing. The first major source of this story reached out to me in October of 2024. This was shortly after I had written a column criticizing the Chicago Sky organization for their handling of Angel Reese, entitled "The Sky Has Fallen," which is on No Cap Space WBB. And over the course of the last handful of months, we have talked to a number of other sources inside the building, outside the building, in WNBA world, even solicited the advice and insight of everybody from legal experts in my orbit to commercial real estate experts in my orbit. Some of the things that we have found in our stories, some of it is not reportable because it has not been second source corroborated. So that stuff is not going to be discussed here. Other pieces are more hearsay and scuttlebutt that we have heard over the course of the last handful of months. But what we are going to dive into here is a situation of behavior versus business. And there are going to be scenarios in here where Michael Alter, the principal owner of the Chicago Sky, will on its face not look like the villain. And it's very important to say that. Michael Alter, for my money, and based on the people that I have spoken to and the documents that I have seen, paints a picture of a pretty well-meaning guy who wants the best for his franchise, but there is a tendency, some say, for him and his top lieutenants, which includes people like Nadia Rawlinson, which includes people like Jeff Pagliacca, which includes Michael's brother, Harvey Alter, who is a part of the Alter group and also involved in the ownership group with the Chicago Sky, that they talk out of both sides of their mouth. They say one thing to one person and one thing to another. So let's begin here with the lawsuit of the Rogers-Smith partners versus Michael Alter. Now, what you are going to see here is a variety of deep and heavy redactions. And there are a bunch of different pieces of information, particularly this page, page 5, where the vast majority of the biggest information and allegations sit. Now, Annie Costabile wrote a solid story in Front Office Sports this afternoon, in which she spoke to several investors that have been involved in the group that could give some supposition as to what they think the basis of this lawsuit is, but also what these redactions were. But the basis of the suit lies in the fact that it is believed that Michael Alter was self-dealing. And what does it mean by self-dealing? It means in sports, professional sports, especially when you start diving on open records requests, and people will do this, and people will sometimes, without the proper training and understanding of what all this is, see certain things in certain documents and assume it means something else. Shell companies exist heavily within sports, right? We are No Cap Space WBB LLC, right? The Chicago Sky are not just one big Chicago Sky LLC. No,
right.
They are not.
Right.
You have Chicago Sky Operations LLC. You have Chicago Sky Investments LLC. You have the Rogers-Smith Partnership LLC, which is Stephen Rogers' group. That is where he has these shares and investments in the Sky that he owns. There are other shell companies out there, you could say. Alter BB LLC, which is involved in this lawsuit. All of these are basically various companies where money gets shuffled around, and it is standard practice in professional sports for this to exist. If you start diving in to LLCs and business licenses of any WNBA franchise, you will find multiple. Corporations do this all the time, registered in Delaware, as they all do. And that is the thing for me where I want everyone to know that this is not a situation of a bottomlessly corrupt, malicious, and malignant presence on the sky and the others around it.
Mm-hmm.
However, incompetence is the name of the game when it comes to the Chicago Sky. So, Tyler, I will ask you this question.
Yes.
To really set the table for where we're going to go next.
Yeah.
What, as a longtime reporter in the WNBA, is the institutional reputation, you think, of the Chicago Sky as an organization, from fans, from players, agents, coaches, etc.?
I potentially the most dysfunctional in the WNBA. One of, if not the most dysfunctional, is something that has rung true for years and years and years, easily since I've been in the game. But I mean, it preludes me really being involved in women's basketball media, is this idea of lack of proper facilities, but also the way that things are handled with staff and things of that nature. And just in general, this is always, I came into this game with this already being incredibly well established as the way that the picture is painted when you discuss the Chicago Sky organization.
And that is something that's shared by not just you, not just me, but a plurality of individuals. Yeah. People you talk to that were in the WNBA in the early 2010s. And this is not sourced privilege information on condition of anonymity.
Very well.
There are players on record,
from
people that aren't huge fans of the organization, like a Gabby Williams or a Courtney Williams, to people that are considered favorites of the organization, like a Courtney Vandersloot. We'll get into that in a second. But the genesis of the start of this story begins in October of 2024. On October 21st of that year, there is a meeting called among owners in the Chicago Sky organization. This information was told to me by a source that was in the room that day. Now, this source was granted anonymity because this is proprietary privileged information. This is information that you can't put out there without getting sued for breaching some type of, not necessarily an NDA, but there are stipulations and provisions written into most contracts that you will not divulge proprietary information that the company gives you. That can be something as simple as a company handing you a handbook and job training. You can't publish that handbook online. You can't hand that handbook to another, a competing company. You will be sued for that kind of thing.
Yep.
That is why we granted sources anonymity for this story. We like to get people on record here. We are okay giving people background sourcing as long as there is a damn good reason for why they are not able to be on record to do this. So the people that you hear in this story that are sourced here are sourced for a specific reason. This source alleged to me that during this October 21st meeting in 2024, following the firing of Teresa Weatherspoon and the 13-27 Chicago Sky season Angel Reese's rookie year, that there was, I guess you could say, a schism among the owners in the Chicago Sky organization. Some were quite upset that Teresa Weatherspoon had been fired. Others, not so much. There were debates internally, not in this meeting, but there have been internal discussions among owner to owner, I have been told, about where people think the problem lies. And it was at this meeting that people wanted answers. And in that meeting, Jeff Pagliacca, Nadia Rawlinson, and Michael Alter were the three that were able to speak. Now, Teresa Weatherspoon, to her credit, has never really gotten in the mud about the reasons for her firing. She has said on record before that she's heard a lot of reasons. She herself does not know, to the best of her knowledge, what the actual reason was. And she told Angel Reese on Unapologetically Angel, which is Reese's podcast, just last week. It's not good to wake up and see your screen and see your let go, and people are asking you, why were you let go? And I'm looking like, hell, I don't know. I can't answer that for you. And when you talk to people around Weatherspoon, most people believe, if not all that are in her orbit, believe she got a raw deal here. Mm-hmm. And that the rationale by the Sky has always been something that doesn't pass the smell test. But as far as the owners go, the people that folks like Pagliocca answer to, sat in this meeting on October 21st, 2024, and said what happened and why. The reason for Spoon's firing, this source tells me, is that Pagliocca attested that no agents would talk to him as long as Weatherspoon was the coach.
And that's interesting, Andrew. That's interesting because from the outside looking in, this is just as me talking. This is nothing else. Not exactly the vibe that I would guess. In terms of
pretty popular coach with the players, right?
The way that players look at Teresa Weatherspoon. I mean, you can look at Unrivaled right now, and the way that she has that vinyl team playing, and the way that they seem to interact with her. That doesn't seem like a coach that players wouldn't want to play for. There were several players on that Sky roster where it certainly didn't give that feeling. Outside looking in, just my own personal opinion, that doesn't really add up to me, Andrew.
Now, it is important to note here that Teresa Weatherspoon was not Jeff Pagliocca's hire. Yeah. Pagliocca was hired as the general manager after Teresa Weatherspoon was hired as the as the head coach. I sent 2 written questions to the Chicago Sky explicitly asking for Jeff Pagliocca's comment. And the 2 questions that I asked were, did you say this? And is that the reason? Now, Sky PR declined to comment. I was under the impression that Jeff Pagliocca had been notified and declined. Now, we are not sure if that is the case, if that request ever got through past Sky PR, or if the declining was a declining on behalf of the organization as opposed to the individual, which was not what we asked. So instead, the Sky GM, through Team PR, declined to answer both of those questions. And to me, I found that a little bit unique, given the fact that if it was indeed nonsense, it would be pretty easy to make a statement that said, that is complete nonsense. Never happened, never was said, or wasn't said like that, wasn't the reason. We respect Teresa's contributions to the team. There were statements able to be made here.
Yeah.
But instead, the Sky responded on Tuesday with a declining to answer the questions. So that leaves us, Tyler, in a bit of a bind. Because now it becomes a case of what's the truth? I talked to multiple agents, and I have talked to multiple agents for months. Over time, question here or there, not a single one has been able to corroborate the notion that they were steering players away from Teresa Weatherspoon in the Chicago Sky. Now, players have been steered away from the Chicago Sky in the past, but for very different reasons.
Yeah, and I think that's a very big distinction to make because, as you know, I mean, players in the past and players that have decided not to go there, or hell, even players on the current roster that were talking about the conditions of the Sky facilities and whatnot over the years. There's plenty of reasons to, frankly, have not wanted to go and be a Chicago Sky player, especially given advancements of other teams in the past, decade to 5 years, however you want to time that out, right? Since Vegas essentially put their facility up in Seattle, there's a plenty of reasons without having Teaspoon even there, where people were already saying that they didn't want to go play for Chicago, let alone the positive comments we have heard about Teaspoon and how that just doesn't add up in its own right.
And I'm glad you brought up the money thing, because the facilities at Bedford Park are something that we will touch on in just a moment. But arguably some of the most damning commentary about the early years of the Chicago Sky actually came from Courtney Vandersloot earlier this year, in what I'm assuming was supposed to be a fun and lighthearted commentary about what it was. But Courtney Vandersloot told the Chicago Tribune's Julia Poe a variety of interesting stories, including one about having to take ice baths in trash cans, about Ann Crosby, the longtime VP of basketball operations, who also doubles as the strength and conditioning coach. And in Vandersloot's early career, she had 4 athletic trainers in the first 2 seasons. As we move further into the 2010s and get out from under the Great Recession, it starts to feel as though things level off at least slightly. It is important to consider and to remember here, Michael Alter's finances and background is in his real estate company. It's just called Alter now. It was rebranded in 2016. It used to be called the Alter Group. It was founded by his father, William Alter, and at one point in the early 2000s was one of the largest commercial real estate firms in the United States. They had and still have property in Scottsdale, Arizona, all over Chicago, Illinois, Atlanta, Georgia. They're all over this country. Now, I think you know what happened in 2007, 2008, 2009, Tyler, right?
Yes, I was a little young, but yes, I still got the gist of it, you know?
but you saw The Big Short.
Yes.
Good film.
100%. Yep.
What happened during that period of time?
A lot of not good things to real estate, Andrew, to put it lightly.
The Great Recession happens around that time. And while we've found through past profiles of Michael Alter, specifically a BizNow profile that is actually on the Alter Group's website, Michael Alter kept the company afloat, even dipped into his own individual savings to avoid layoffs, to make sure that there were no liquidity issues. And to Michael Alter's credit, I think this should be noted, while real estate firms and Wall Street firms were going balls to the wall on what is called mortgage-backed securities, MBSs, and collateralized debt obligations, CDOs, the 2 basically poisonous financial mechanisms that created the Great Recession, while many got involved in the dealing of those toxic assets, he never did. So while there was significant financial strain, severe cash flow pressure, as he said to BizNow in 2016, the company was able to get out relatively unscathed. And by the mid-2010s, we are more or less back to normal. It's around that time that we start to see changes within the WNBA. We start to see more investment. Teams are expanding. Michael Alter took over the team in 2005 when the league was really at a low point. You know, organizations were dumping a ton of money into their franchises. People weren't watching. ESPN hired one particularly miserable bastard named Mark Shapiro, who is quoted in a wonderful book about ESPN, Jim Miller's book called Those Guys Have All the Fun, about a beef that he had with David Stern over not wanting to put the WNBA on television. And in response to Stern more or less telling him to fuck off, Shapiro put much of the WNBA on ESPN2 and buried it away so it could not reach the TV ratings highs that it had in the late 1990s when it was on NBC before the NBA and WNBA took their contract to ABC and ESPN. A lot of people don't know this. In the late 1990s, in the first 3 seasons of the WNBA, their ratings were on par with the NHL. It wasn't until the second TV deal hits in the early 2000s and the TV contract switches to ESPN that we start to see this low point.
Yep.
10 years after Michael Alter gets ownership of this team, you start to see some strange cracks forming here and there. Sylvia Fowles asks for a trade out of Chicago in spite of being one of the biggest stars in the league at that time, and asked for a trade specifically to the Minnesota Lynx, citing in an article in the Minnesota Star Tribune that the state of the art at that time practice facility that was going to be used by the Lynx and the Minnesota Timberwolves right across the street from the Target Center was a huge reason why she wanted to do it. Elena Delle Donne is drafted in that incredible class that included Skylar Diggins and Brittany Griner. And she asked for a trade after a couple years. A revolving door of coaches once again. Pokey Chapman, the head coach who had led the Sky to the WNBA Finals with Delle Donne, is fired. And it is leaked out into the press that there are problems between Chapman and Delle Donne. Delle Donne, in her book later on, denied it completely. Phil Thompson, who was writing for the Chicago Tribune at that time, had a sourced article of his own in 2017 that basically said the reverse was true. There was not an issue between Pokey Chapman and Elena Delle Donne. It was actually the frustration caused by a constant revolving door of coaches. Sound familiar?
Sure does. Sounds very familiar, Andrew.
So where do we go from here? Well, it all comes down to money.
Always.
That's really what it comes down
Always.
to. And the other nugget here, Tyler.
Yeah.
And I'll ask you, I'm going to test you on how well you read my stories. This is very self-indulgent right now.
Oh, God.
Was there a team in the early 2000s in the WNBA that did turn an operating profit?
Ooh. God, now I'm nervous. You put me on the spot on your stories. In the early 2000s, I would imagine it would be one of the more successful teams. But it's a team that is it Connecticut?
You are correct.
Is it Connecticut? Come on, I read your stories. I read them all. I read them all. Notably, a team that has been for all the interestingly enough, and I think like it's interesting to bring them up into this, and this might be the point you're getting to. I might be jumping the gun a little bit, but it's a team that you could equally have conversations about the facilities, but you can't have the same conversations about the stability of the decision makers with the Connecticut Sun.
You are right on the money.
Come on.
Got it. The Connecticut Sun bought what was originally the Orlando Miracle, owned by the DeVos family. Yes, that DeVos family that owned the Orlando Magic at the time. They bought into the Miracle when the WNBA was founded. And after a couple years, they decided that they wanted to punt on it. The Connecticut Sun come in. They buy the team. They relocated to Uncasville. They are the first WNBA team to turn a profit. They do this in 2003. Think about that.
It's crazy.
23 years ago, the Connecticut Sun, a team that we malign for being an underfunded organization,
would not be you would never guess just on the way we discuss it normally and like the dialogues generally speaking surrounding the Connecticut Sun. You would never. They'd be possibly my last pick if you made me look at the league during that year and had me pick a team.
About 20 years after that happens, at this October 21st, 2024 meeting, I was told by a source present in that meeting that Michael Alter stood up in front of everyone and was very excited to announce that it was the first time ever in the history of the Chicago Sky franchise that the organization had turned a profit. Wow. And that disbursements would be sent out to minority shareholders for the first time ever in the history of the franchise. Now, I think are a lot of reasons that people can say, well, it takes a long time. Michael Alter has been subsidizing this team from the very beginning. And that is very true. That is very true. And it should not be lost on anybody that Michael Alter has, and it is a fact, put a lot of money into this team. However, the Connecticut Sun's example shows us that even in a small market, a small TV market, a relatively remote place in Uncasville, with players practicing in a rec center, profit could be found as early as 2003.
Yeah.
Now, the schism that is occurring, and that I have been told within the ownership group, is a general feeling that you can attribute a good portion of the 2024 profit and the reason for it turning a profit to Angel Reese. Yeah. And it would be somewhat hard to argue that fact.
Yeah, I'm certainly not going to be the one to do so. That seems Fair enough to me.
But the institutional belief in the building is that the 2021 WNBA championship won on the backs of Candace Parker, Kalia Copper, James Wade is the head coach, and a player personnel guy on the staff named Jeff Pagliacca was the blueprint for championship culture and DNA. And that 2021 championship, I have been told by more than one individual in the building, has been held up as an example that their way works. They being Michael Alter, Nadia Rollins, and Jeff Pagliacca. That their way works. Their way of how they want to do this works. And yet, we are still here having the money discussion. And this is where things get hard. Because people, I'm sure, will start to dig. And I'm going to head you off on something before you even do it. There are stories and articles out there about a specific real estate deal in the early 2020s that Michael Alter and his company got significantly burned on. This is a building on Kinsey Street in Chicago, a building that the Alter Group developed and built from the ground up, taking a substantial loan from Bank of America to be able to do it. Salesforce was the original anchor tenant. It was a very heralded deal. Salesforce jumped into one building, Google jumped into another. In short, the Alter Group was balling at this time. Salesforce leaves the building, and the primary anchor tenant of the building is WeWork. For those that don't know the lore of WeWork, it was a Silicon Valley startup that basically gave co-working space. They rented space out of buildings so individuals that were working remotely, people that didn't have business storefronts, could operate in these places. Basically, maker spaces on a larger scale. It turned out to all be bunk. A run on the bank happens. Sam Newman, is their CEO, is shown to be a complete and total huckster. And WeWork starts to default on rent payments all across the country. I have been told by those in the commercial real estate industry that this is not restricted to Chicago, and it is not restricted to Michael Alter. There are companies in New York that got burned by this. There are companies in San Francisco that got burned by this. There are a lot of people that WeWork owed a lot of money to. But the second largest creditor, that WeWork owed money to was Michael Alter and the Alter Group. Out $11 million in loans and termination fees. That number feels big to normal people like us. And the next number I'm going to tell you is going to feel even bigger. Shortly after that lawsuit was filed by the Alter Group against WeWork, and this is a massive lawsuit that is still ongoing because it is going through bankruptcy court. WeWork is still in bankruptcy court. That will likely not be figured out for a very long time. But the Alter Group appeared, it's hard to say without full certainty being in the building, and unfortunately I do not have sources in the C-suite of the Alter Group, as nice as that would be. The belief seems to be that it was a decision to cut losses, to wipe your hands of a property and move on. Alter ended up selling that property for around $20 million. Post-COVID, commercial real estate vacancies are completely falling apart, and he sells the building at a pretty substantial loss, somewhere between $30 and $40 million. For anybody that wants to do more digging on Michael Alter or the Alter Group, you're going to see this article. It is important that you not share this as the example that Michael Alter is losing money or that the Alter Group is losing money and not financially solvent. I solicited the advice of several friends who are very high up in commercial real estate. I'm in my 30s. It's like eventually you grow up and like people that, people go on to do great things, right?
Shout out to them.
And as a media guy, sometimes you got to call people and say, hey, I don't know what I don't know. My understanding is that absent being in the building, it is extraordinarily difficult, if not downright impossible, to know exactly what the balance sheet of a company looks like. Sometimes even with mergers and buyouts, you could buy a company that is totally messed up on their balance sheet, but they look attractive in other places, and vice versa. It can also be true. A good company that's healthy financially might not be the company that you want. So I would caution people when they see stories from this WeWork transaction, when they see Michael Alter and his company selling land in Grayslake, Illinois, for data centers that are going into a massive development there. Those are not indicators of financial solvency or insolvency. because the book of business that the Alta Group does is so significantly large. Remember, we said at one point they were one of the top 5 commercial real estate firms in the United States.
Yeah.
It is impossible without being in the building to know how well they are doing financially. And that is the crux of this story. And that's how we end up in the village of Bedford Park. Tyler, what is Bedford Park and what is their significance to the Chicago Sky?
Well, that's where the Splash facility is supposed to be going, is it not?
Correct.
So yeah, this is you talk about real estate. Maybe the most important real estate that the Chicago Sky have going on right now is involving Bedford Park.
And what, in your opinion, has been the dialogue over the last 12 months about this place?
Nobody has any idea what's actually going on, whether it be like groundbreakings that don't feel like, when we see in comparison to other groundbreakings, like they seem weird. No one has any, it felt like going into the store, like it's just consistently where it felt like other, especially in comparison to other WNBA franchises who were doing a pretty good job of like painting the picture of what things were going to look like. Also, it felt like doing a better job of the facility that they were planning on building, just in general, frankly. It felt like they were, even though that they were kind of finally investing into the facilities in some degree, still felt like they were falling behind in comparison to other facilities, whether it be on the timing, whether it be on the communication of it and like how things were going, and even just some of the inner workings of the facility itself in comparison to some of these larger facilities we see across the WNBA.
There are plenty of facilities in the WNBA that are not only substantial investments by their own franchises, purpose-built facilities. That is, when I say purpose-built, I mean they are built to house a WNBA franchise. They are not split facilities.
Yep.
The Portland Fire are an exception, but it is because they are in a very unique situation. Their ownership group also owns the Portland Thorns of the NWSL. And the Bethals, which is that ownership group, have decided that they want to build a purpose-driven facility that houses both of Portland's professional women's sports teams. So they are somewhat of an exception to this rule, as are the Connecticut Sun. Now, the Connecticut Sun, Tyler, as you can recall, had a little bit of a drama, and Alyssa Thomas was
100%. Yeah, I mean, this is something that we heard about the birthday parties going on at the Connecticut Sun, like practices, and the things like that were just, I mean, this is a shared facility with the community, and it was, and as you wrote, a very unique situation given the ownership group that owns the Connecticut Sun and how the inner workings of that and finding community purpose in investments works with the Connecticut Sun and how they have to operate as a franchise. But it certainly didn't negate what was being said from their star players. And now we've gone through a whole lot of this rebuild now with Connecticut, where you don't see any of that Alyssa Thomas, DeWanna Bonner, Dejanay Carrington. That whole team essentially is gone now, and a lot of it is on the back of those complaints and feelings about the facility ringing true enough that they felt like they wanted to go to other places, no matter what the reason and the explanation was behind it for the Connecticut Sun.
That's the tricky thing with the Sun, is their facility cannot effectively be built for a WNBA team solely. The reason for that is, as much money as the Mohegan tribe has, the Mohegan tribe's sovereign laws, their own tribal laws, say that anything they build has to have some semblance of public good for the members of the tribe. And you cannot build a WNBA facility for solely a WNBA team, because there has to be something within the building that is going to be done for the betterment of the tribe. That's why that facility is shared. Chicago, on the other hand, is still planning on sharing this Bedford Park facility. It is still unknown if this is being used as a short-term play to try and negotiate a larger venue somewhere else in the future, or if this really is the end game for the Chicago Sky. In a lot of ways, I think the best analog I can give, just to editorialize briefly here, is the Oakland A's playing in Sacramento before going to Las Vegas. Now, the difference is that stadium in Las Vegas, the site of the old Tropicana Casino, there are already stakes in the ground for that.
Sure.
The A's are not going to have a situation in which that stadium falls through and they are stuck in Sacramento.
Mm-hmm.
There was a belief at one point about whether or not John Fisher, the owner of the A's, could get it done, and that being the case, right? Here, we're not really sure what the end game is. We're not sure if Bedford Park and the facility is being used in the same way that John Fisher and the A's are using Sutter Health Park in Sacramento as a home base, as a temporary home base, or if this is going to be the place, more or less, where they're going to be for 20 to 25 years. You know who else is a little confused about that, Tyler?
Who, Andrew?
The Village Board of Trustees in Bedford Park. This is the governmental entity of the Village of Bedford Park. They operate with a board of trustees. And at this meeting, which was not this most recent Tuesday the 2nd, but the prior Tuesday, the end of January, all about the Chicago Sky and what is happening with this facility. Now, we did not have to go very far or look very hard to find this document. It is very important to note that. Typically, the way these things work is at the following meeting, the prior meeting's minutes are approved. Once those minutes are approved, then they are put on a website for public information. It had been a week. And so it was really easy to just reach out to the Village of Bedford Park and say, I would like to do an open records request as a media member for these meeting minutes. And now here they are.
Yeah, here we go.
So this all comes down to a frustration over cost overruns at this particular here in Bedford Park.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out a way to maximize this a little further, but that's about as deep as it'll go for now. Effectively, what is happening here is this was initially proposed as a $32 million investment. It went up to $43.2 million. As of the most recent count at this board meeting, it is now roughly 46.8, 46.9. There is a little bit of a disagreement about how much the money is, right?
Okay.
I want to draw attention to one thing in particular here. I am going to need to take a sec to go find it on the page so people can actually see the quote, because I'm not just bringing these things up as eye candy for you. I want you to actually see what we are discussing.
There's receipts.
Yes.
there's receipts. We want to use receipts.
Look, these are simple receipts, man. Like this, it's very important here that I want people to understand how this stuff works. Like this isn't subterfuge by anybody. Governments are required to do these meetings. They are required to have somebody transcribe and take minutes, and they are required to post them online.
Yep.
And the discussions that these trustees are having is at their dais, knowing full well that they are on record here, knowing full well that somebody like me could request them, could find them, could read them, could pull some quotes out of them, and get an idea as to what the frustration and the story is. But the big problem that is found is about 6 pages in here, where you have a couple of different individuals that are expressing a degree of frustration. Village board trustee Terry Stocks saying, quote, it's a damn shame that we get down to this thing and the disagreements. It just puts a dividing line between the village and the Sky management. And for everybody that's ready to bury Michael Alter solely for this, and while there are a lot of things you can bury Michael Alter for, this is what I was talking about at the front of this conversation.
Yep.
Business versus behavior. This is not necessarily shady business by Michael Alter. This is par for the course business for most owners of most sports franchises. The issue is, while other organizations, especially in the WNBA, most recently the Los Angeles Sparks, who dropped $150 million on a practice facility in El Segundo, fronting that cost themselves, the largest investment of its kind in the history of women's sports, not WNBA history, in the history of all women's sports.
Period. Yeah.
The Sparks $150 million investment was the single largest investment into a team of this nature. Michael Alter is playing on an old playbook, a playbook that's being used by NFL franchises rather than WNBA franchises, for instance. And it is noted by Village Board President David Brady that it's really not just on Michael Alter here, saying, quote, well, it's a moving line, but it's not only the sky. Concord, who is the capital construction firm that is representing Bedford Park's interest in this facility, effectively hasn't done good work here in phase 2. In phase 1, they were great, according to Brady. They're the ones that really oversee it, and on phase 1, we had no problems with Concord. But they've gone through personnel, this design contingency or design review process that we went through, it was not good. Okay, I think we'll end up okay, but it's not good. So the thing that's stalling things out at this point is a concern not only over the cost overrun, but who's going to shoulder the cost.
Yeah.
As of this most recent additional fee, right? The additional $2.5 million or so that has to go in to the facility to be able to fulfill a GMP, which is called a guaranteed maximum price. When you hear about facilities or stadiums and how much they cost, when you look at government documents, when you hear them in a construction or real estate term, the term that they will use to describe that number is a GMP. The GMP of this thing being as much as it is required another $2 to $2.5 million. The idea was that the Village of Bedford Park was going to pay 44% of that cost. The Sky was going to pay 56% of that cost. It's also important to note that while the Sky were only on the hook to pay about 17% of the total building, with these additional overruns, they've actually started to shoulder a much more significant burden. So there is, and this is something that goes against the Michael Alter is a broke boy argument, which is dude's throwing money down on this. The problem came up that did not help Michael Alter beat the broke boy allegations is consternation over a revision that was suggested in the new updated operating agreement between the city and the team. And that discrepancy and revision stated that all the money that the Chicago Sky has put into this facility, the Village of Bedford Park would be on the hook to pay all of it back.
There it is. That'll do. That'll do and make it a hang up here. Goodness.
You can imagine that the Village of Bedford Park's trustees were not happy about that whatsoever.
Yeah.
In fact, according to the transcript, stating not once, not twice, but 3 different times, we are not going to do that. We would sooner walk than do that. And as one trustee put it, I'm just saying there's been a lot of bickering about this. Now, Michael Alter was not at this meeting. According to Larry Gryshevsky, the village attorney, he was going to Israel with a group of 12 black ministers for a religious trip, some type of organizational trip that Alter does. He's very, very active within his community, also into Chicago. And every time they have requested a meeting, there was interesting descriptions about how Alter handles those types of meetings. So if we reopen this, we will go to page 15 of this particular transcript. Within that page, all the way toward the bottom where Gryshevsky is talking about where Michael Alter is and where he has been, another trustee, or Gryshevsky himself, mind you, says he's a business person. He'll cut you off, but I mean, I think he wants it here. Not great.
not exactly
not at all a ringing endorsement for whether or not it is something that is wanted.
Yeah. Not ideal. Oh my God.
Not ideal. But that in itself, it tells you right there the frustration.
Yeah.
That the village board has had, not just with Michael Alter and the Chicago Sky, but also with their own construction firm, Concord, who has been equally as fuzzy in getting the village the numbers that they need to understand how much they are on the hook for a facility that ultimately they will fully own.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where the biggest issue happens. Now, there was another meeting yesterday on Tuesday, February 3rd. An official review of the contract occurred there. When the time comes, when those minutes are approved, we will be able to go get those for you. Mm-hmm. We will submit another open records request, and we will go get them for you. And we will report it, and we will read it, and we will see if there is anything new involved with it.
Sure.
But the biggest issue that we see again lies in behavior. It lies in saying one thing and doing another. It lies in people not knowing enough about you. There is a fundamental lack of trust here. And that is what this story is about, is that on all sides, from the personnel side to the players' side, to the village of Bedford Park, to the fans, to people like us in the media that are vastly skeptical of this organization, there is a distinct lack of trust that seems rooted in this group of Michael Alter, Nadia Rawlinson, and Jeff Pagliacca.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'll leave you with this.
I'm ready.
We will return to our story, and we will return to the October 21st meeting. That source that was present for that meeting told No Cap Space that a question was posed. Quote, "Where's our billionaire? And should we sell the team?"
Goodness. Oh, I mean, that, again, I keep comparing to other teams, especially when you name the Sparks, because when you ask the facility question, that's the team that came to mind, and that's obviously a historic level of investment. But yeah, that one stings when you hear that, especially with that at front of mind.
Yes. And that is why we will wrap back in Bedford Park and take you to page 12 of the board meeting transcript. And I will read this for you here because it is the place you want to end on in regards to why nobody seems to trust this organization. This was everyone trying to figure out what to do. Village attorney Larry Gryszewski is basically the guy in Bedford Park that is taking a lot of the information that these trustees are getting and bringing it to the trustees so they can understand. Now, Gryszewski in this portion is talking to the trustees, basically saying, we need to really make sure that the language is ironclad. Mm-hmm. I'll quote him here. "I know it's extremely important. They do indicate in here any change orders that they require or we require if we ask for it, our cost. If they ask for it, they being the Sky, their cost," which makes sense. Village President Brady also agrees and says, yeah, that does make sense. Mm-hmm. Now, Gryszewski says that Alter would sign a personal guarantee for that money. Trustee Terry Stocks responds and says he's definitely got the network to back it, to which village attorney Gryszewski says he's a billionaire.
Oh, would you look at that?
So for the owners wondering where their billionaire is, according to the village of Bedford Park, the billionaire is sitting right in front of you. Mm. And while the village said that he's been good to them through this entire process, and I think it is important to be very fair to Michael Alter here, because I do think that just because the dude might be a potentially incompetent owner does not mean he is a Lex Luthor level supervillain.
Sure.
He just might be the type of incompetence that I, as a longtime New York Knicks fan, have become very used to seeing.
Yeah. This might hit a little close to home for you.
A little bit.
Yeah.
But sometimes you know how to spot one.
Mm-hmm.
The issue of the lack of trust takes one last kicker at the end. And the quote that we ended our story on.
Mm-hmm.
Because for all of the consternation about the facility at Bedford Park, about phase 1 being for the community and phase 2 being for the sky being a potentially temporary or permanent tenant. They could be there for as long as 20 years if they wanted to. They could be there for as little as 2. But they've dumped a lot of money in it. And over time, after 20 years, you're likely to get that money back. You leave after 2 to try and find your own facility, you probably will have just sunk a lot of money into somebody else's project. But Village President David Brady seems to give up the goose without even realizing it, telling Village Attorney Larry Gryshevsky, who, as I had said, obviously very intelligent, or quote, they also have a right to go build, which they might. He's obviously very, very intelligent, very, very wealthy. He wants to build eventually, to which Village President David Brady cuts him off and says he could build his own stadium. He's told me that.
Mm.
And that is where we leave our current situation with the Chicago Sky. An organization that was willing to more or less throw Teresa Weatherspoon under the bus and give their owners, according to our sources, a answer and justification that we later found out does not seem remotely close to the truth. And I want to be clear here. These are not C-tier agents that are talking this way, right? And on top of that dysfunction, there is a clear lack of trust here in Michael Alter on both ends of the spectrum. And that, to me, is the picture being painted of an embattled owner who, as well-meaning as he probably was when he bought this team, is now facing a fork in the road to decide what kind of owner he is going to be and what kind of legacy it wants to be. Because it can certainly change. And as we go into editorial column territory here at the end, it is not too late to throw the money down if you've got it.
Yeah.
Legacies can be changed for the good rather quickly.
Yeah.
But everything that we have seen over the course of the last 15 years and 20, actually, when you really think about it with this organization, is that there has been a long pattern of dysfunction. And when you go through coaches and you go through GMs and you go through players and you go through eras of people, and the only one left is you, then the problems that have persisted for 20 years might not be everybody else's fault. And that's where we leave our story. There was a meeting, as we mentioned, on February 3rd, a village trustee meeting in which this was still discussed. And that will be the subject of a story next week, most likely, when we get those documents to figure out what was said at that meeting. It is going to be extremely likely that that contract was signed. The GMP was approved in that January 26th meeting. And it is extremely likely that this contract was figured out, was revised, and done on terms that are fine with everybody. I would like to hope that's the case for their sake. Otherwise, y'all are going to be right back here running these numbers up as we run through some drama.
Yeah.
But until that point happens, the picture that has been painted of the Chicago Sky through sources, through documents, through lawsuits, and more is that of an organization that seems to have its head in the right place, but is completely unwilling to realize they are tripping over their own 2 feet constantly.
Yeah. Andrew, hell of a job. Hell of a job. I mean, goodness. That's a lot to digest. This might take a watch or two, or you might have to go back and that's a lot. I can't tell you how many times I read that article to make sure, because there's a lot of moving pieces here. And it's something that we will certainly at No Cap Space be paying attention to and continuing on with and seeing what comes next here in this. But great job, man. Great reporting. And if you want to support reporting like this, and again, normally we're a little bit more happy-go-lucky, a little bit more cheerful with the content, but we are journalists. This is what we are all of us at No Cap Space are trying
Big
to
J
do.
knows how to come out when
it needs to,
folks.
This is,
and I'm going to say, this for people. Like, I don't mean to like, you know, spike the football or puff myself by any means, but the group of us here at No Cap Space have collectively 40 plus years of journalism experience. I've been in the industry for 10 plus years. Shawnee has been in the industry for 10 plus years. You're probably coming up around 4 or 5, I would wager. Yeah. Greer's been in it for about 10. Richard is, I would say, probably in the 4 or 5 year range as well. We are traditionally trained. While we love to BS and talk and do our stuff, we know how to do this. And we don't have a fear of institutions, at least I don't, and we're going to be here. And if you want to support independent journalism within the WNBA and within women's basketball, look to your independent outlets, because those are the people that are going to be willing to do stories like this. Because we don't have any obligations to sources or media rights partners. We don't have any obligations to people that are, you know, we see every day and they got to maintain copacetic nature with. Yeah. People in this industry can be upset when a bad story comes their way, but from us, you're always going to get truth and balance. As we have said here, Michael Alter is not a villain. Michael Alter is a businessman doing some stupid businessman shit. And if that's enough for him, then you might as well lock every business guy up in The Hague. You know, if he's a war criminal to that degree, right? But at the same time, these are multi-million-dollar, 9-figure institutions. The Chicago Sky represent a city. They represent a people. And although they are a money-making franchise, sports teams are a public utility. They are a public service to their people. They represent their town. They represent their culture. They represent the fabric of a place. There is a cultural component to South Carolina basketball. There is a cultural component to Iowa women's basketball. The Golden State Valkyries showed us this year that there is a cultural component to Valhalla, and there is a cultural component to the Seattle Storm. Those are things that owners should feel an obligation to try and do the best they can for their teams, because that is the people that you are serving. And so if you think that because you own a team that you are above reproach for the behavior that you have, then you better prepare for us to be in this place for a real long time. Because No Cap Space ain't going anywhere. And there's plenty more open record requests to file, plenty more FOIAs to get, and plenty more redactions to fight if we really want to.
Yeah.
So subscribe. We got the daily newsletter. It is free. You would have got this piece yesterday if you had been subscribed. So if you don't want to miss stuff and you don't want to wait a day for us to make sure we get to where we got to go for our coverage so we can sit down and actually do a YouTube video, go over there. Reading ain't dead yet. It's worth the check when you do it. You should follow us on social media and consider upgrading to the Ball Knowers tier. It's a paid subscription, yes, and I know that there's a lot of independent outlets, and I know everyone's paying for every subscription out the nose these days. It's $7 a month, and it helps fund journalism like this. If you're somebody that is really wanting Big J journalism back in women's basketball, if you support that, you get more of this. Simple transaction, because we're not stopping. We're always going to be here.
I love it, Andrew, and I have to mention it. You make sure you subscribe to the YouTube as well, so you don't miss out on our great stuff like this, our lives. If you're watching this the day it drops, we have boots at Texas LSU, so make sure you're tapped in for that. And just, again, make sure you're not missing out on anything here that we have at No Cap Space. So for myself, for Andrew, make sure you stay tapped in, and we'll talk to you very, very soon.